Well, I certainly wasn't expecting that. The very first Qatar Grand Prix at the circuit Losail, or Losail? I thought it was Losail, L-O-S-L-O-S-A-I-L. But then F1 was spelling it Lusail, L-U-S-A-I-L. Now the official social handles and everything were Losail, L-O-S-A-I-L. So I'm going to go with Losail moving forwards into the video, and if that's wrong, you can correct me down in the comment box down below. Been a MotoGP circuit since its opening in 2004, but this is the first time Formula One wheels have graced the track. Pretty decent race, all things considered. Momentum seriously still in Mercedes' court at the end of the triple header here, but Red Bull still managing to keep a little bit of damage limitation on. Mercedes go into the final 2 rounds leading the constructors, but Max Verstappen still leads Lewis Hamilton in the Drivers' Championship. Certainly a lot to talk about. I'm just going to briefly talk about the circuit first because it had a lot of positive feedback from the drivers themselves, saying it was a great circuit full of long straights, fast corners, a good variation throughout the lap, a lot of overtaking opportunities as we saw exploited during the race. Obviously, it was a race in the desert, so you don't normally expect rain. We did have a bit of moisture overnight one day, which was shocking, to be fair, but that obviously cleaned off the track. The track was very green anyway because there wasn't, I don't think, any support races going on, and if so, there weren't many. It hasn't really been rubbered in, this track. It's very new to single-seater racing, as I said at the start. So this is the first time Formula One has set wheels on the Losail circuit. Very much an unknown for everybody. Whether it was going to be a Red Bull favoured or Mercedes favoured track was to be seen, and throughout practice it just wasn't clear. Mercedes seemed to have a little bit of an edge throughout the weekend, but as I say, it's always difficult to tell really until we get down to qualifying which team is on top. Qualifying did really seem to favour Mercedes. Hamilton took pole ahead of Verstappen, ahead of Bottas. And the trio was split by 0.6 of a second. To be fair, that was both to Hamilton. Hamilton was 0.6 up on everybody, and Bottas was only a few thousandths of a second, I think, in the end, off Verstappen's lap time to take third. Close fighting, I think, from the FP3 session, if I remember correctly. It had looked like Mercedes was just going to kind of walk away with it, so it was good to see Red Bull come back. Red Bull had the wiggly wing. That's what they had going on for them. So I thought it was deliberate. Back to rear wing debacles, of course. It's 2021. That's clearly all we talk about now. But basically, here's your rear wing. Another technical talk by Alice Holloway. So the rear wing, basically, as it came down the straights, you could see it in comparison to the other ones as well, especially in the slow-mos, but it was basically oscillating. It was wiggling like this. Now, I thought it was deliberate. I thought it was helping to disrupt the airflow, to maybe cheekily open the rear wing a little bit more, to get more airflow through there in the DRS section, really compress that car down into the track. I was wrong. It was not deliberate. Obviously, off the back of Brazil, the FIA saw that quite quickly in free practice 1 and were very much like, nah, Red Bull, get rid of that. We don't want any of that, thank you. We don't want any more discussions about rear wings, especially when Red Bull are threatening to claim the current Mercedes rear wing is illegal. We'll see how that turns out. Hopefully they do nothing, because it would be great to have this championship decided on the track rather than off it in a political shamble, but it is F1. They did eventually manage to get that fixed, and so it then stopped oscillating down the straights and was smoothly opening and closing with the DRS. Now, before the race even got underway, we had the double yellow debacle. Basically, the biggest problem here was in the final sector of Q3, Pierre Gasly had a tyre blowout, as we'll discuss further later on in the video, because there were more in the race. We basically saw his car pulled up on the start-finish straight at the end of Q3. Now, ever since Hungary 2016, it's kind of been when Nico Rosberg managed to get pole position at Hungary, even though he went through a yellow sector. He still managed to improve. And there was a whole debate about how could he have lifted and still managed to improve on his lap time to take pole, right? So ever since then, if there's a yellow sector in qualifying and a driver still manages to improve their lap time, it basically then the FIA have to investigate that, because technically it's kind of suggested that they didn't lift enough. So what happened was Gasly's car tyre blew out, he pulled up quite a way off the racing line, but on the main straight, which means the final sector, or at least the final corner, goes yellow. Now, I don't quite know how this happened, and I'm not going to go into the details because I really don't know how it happened. But basically, there's a digital flag system by EM Motorsport, if you're interested. And that digital flag system is linked to all of the digi-flags around the track, to race control, and it displays on the driver's steering wheels as well. Basically, if someone in race control goes, boop, sector 3 is now yellow, on the driver's dash will come up a little yellow flag and be like, hey, this sector's yellow, by the way. And that didn't happen for Gasly's car. I don't know whether it was because it was checkered flag. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not going into it because I don't know how that happened. But the digi flags were not yellow, which meant on every driver's dash going through that section at that time, there was no yellow flags. However, the marshal on the last corner was manually waving a yellow flag, which was a single yellow flag at first, changed to a double yellow flag, closer to the checkered flag. I can't quite remember when, but it was single, it went to doubles. I guess it was single when the tyre blew out, and then it went to doubles when he pulled up and stopped to let them know that there was obviously an incident on track ahead of them. 3 cars improved their lap time in the final part of qualifying 3. Carlos Sainz, Max Verstappen, and Valtteri Bottas. All 3 of them were pulled to the stewards. Somehow, Sainz managed to get away with it, no grid penalty at all. Bottas was given a 3-place grid penalty because he was seen to be speeding through a single waved yellow flag. Max Verstappen got a 5-place grid drop because he was seen to be speeding through a double waved yellow. Like I said, and I'll just reiterate, I'm not going to go into the details of that because I don't really know what happened. I don't know how Sainz got away with it. Genuinely don't know how he did that. If you improve on a lap that has a yellow sector, by definition, you should not be able to improve. So I don't know how Carlos Sainz got away with that. Clearly, Ferrari had something in their data that meant they could prove he had, in fact, lifted in that section. Fine, whatever. The FIA make the decisions they make. And the difference between the Bottas penalty and the Verstappen penalty was it was a single yellow versus a double yellow. Basically saying all this, because I've just said I'm not going into any more detail about it, because that then impacted the grid for the next day, which saw Hamilton staying on pole, Gasly, amazingly, with a tyre blowout, managing to get 2nd on the grid, and Alonso up to 3rd. Bottas got dropped down to 6th, promoting Norris to 5th, and Verstappen got dropped down to 9th, I think, which promoted Sainz, and it also promoted Tsunoda up to 7th. So, amazingly, Sainz got investigated and gained a position. But basically, yeah, that kind of mixed up the entire grid. Perez hadn't even made it through to Q3. He got knocked out in Q2. So it was very much kind of looking like Mercedes' opportunity to extend leads to extend the lead in constructors, but maybe take the lead in drivers. It was looking like a Mercedes race to lose. So it was a good drive from Hamilton, managed to go from pole to take victory, to take his 98th victory, I think we're on? No, 102nd, because 101 was Brazil, and that was also the 101st race raced at Brazil. So that was kind of nice for Brazil, but this was his 102nd win. He got away off the start, extended a nice lead. The Red Bulls did in fact seem to have the pace to chase and catch the Mercedes, but in the end, Verstappen ran out of laps. I think Verstappen was about 9 seconds down the road with maybe 10 laps to go. Red Bull made the decision that he wasn't going to manage to pull that gap and close that gap, so they brought him in, put on a fresh pair of tyres to take the fastest lap point, which he did in fact end up with. So a great drive from Verstappen to come up through the field. As I kind of said, I think it was the American Grand Prix? No, must have been Brazil. It was the Brazilian Grand Prix. Like I said there, you kind of expect these cars, the Red Bulls and the Mercedes, to carve through the field pretty fast because they are in a league of their own. In comparison to every other car on the grid, Mercedes and Red Bull really sit over here and the rest of the grid as well. And then you've got Ferrari and McLaren and then the rest of the grid, right? So they're very much in a league of their own. You do expect them to carve through the field pretty quickly if they are chasing, having to climb up the field, having to pass through traffic early doors. Obviously, Verstappen was trying to do that fairly quickly because the longer it took him to get through the field, the further ahead Hamilton was pulling that gap. So a good job from Hamilton to manage the tyres and everything well. A great job from Verstappen to come from 9th to second at the end of the race. It wasn't the best of starts for Valtteri Bottas, which kind of saw him slipping down the order early doors, and then it just became a case of who was going to get back up the grid fastest, Bottas or Perez. Perez did an absolute much better job than Bottas of coming up through the field. As I said, it was kind of at this moment, it seemed like Red Bull had the advantage, and so it's kind of annoying that the chance to watch them go Hamilton Verstappen off the line was taken away, because I think the duo would have had a much better fight. There would have been many opportunities for Verstappen to try and make the overtake, but tyres would have come into play. Burning the tyres, trying to pass Hamilton would have come into play. A load more would have come into play, and I think it would have made for a more interesting and dynamic race. And kind of like those races you want when the championship is so on the line right now, yeah? So, c'est la vie, it is what it is, but it is a shame that we got robbed of that Hamilton versus Verstappen fight that we could have had. Because like I said, he was on average 15 seconds behind him, and just managing tyres and seemingly unable to close that gap, whereas Perez came through the field quite rapidly, unlike Bottas, who really did struggle, unfortunately, during this race. I will get on to the cheeky little other podium finisher in a moment, but I just want to touch on Bottas's race while we're here. Obviously, it was very important to Mercedes that Bottas finished well for the constructors. It was very important to Mercedes that Bottas beat Perez for the constructors. Unfortunately, neither of which things happened. Bottas suffered one of the 3 tyre blowouts during the race as well, which caused a lot of floor damage to his car, which in the end led to him having to retire from the race and score no points. But even at that point, he was running 11th, 12th. He wasn't in the points. He wasn't closing enough to the guys ahead to be looking like he was going to get in the points. So a really unfortunate race for Bottas. Obviously, he's only got a couple more with the Mercedes, and he wants to make a nice finale of it all, but the last 2 races really just haven't gone his way. Specifically this one with that unfortunate tyre blowout. I think the team maybe tried to run the tyres a bit too much, or it's an investigation for Pirelli, as we did have 3 tyre blowouts during this race, the other 2 being the 2 Williams, and they all kind of happened around the same lap time. So can't remember if I don't think we've had anything from Pirelli about that. I think it might have just been written off to, we ran them too hard, new circuit, we're learning. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for these guys, which, is kind of part of the game. If Pirelli had suggested to them only run them for 20 laps and they went, we're going to run them for 30, Pirelli will sit there going, well, if they blow out, that's on you now. So, a difficult one, and again, I'm sitting here without all the information, so I'm being very cautious not to say too much either way, because I don't know whether that was a Pirelli mistake or a Mercedes/Williams mistake, but all in all, not a very good race for Bottas, not the result Mercedes wanted. Hamilton's win took Verstappen's driver's lead down to 8 points. That's the closest it's been for a very long time, with only technically 52 points left on the table. And now the constructors is down to 5, I think, with the double point score for Red Bull and a single point score for Mercedes. This is really coming down to the wire. It is possible for Verstappen to take the championship in Saudi Arabia. If he wins and takes the fastest lap and Hamilton is 6th or lower, Verstappen is crowned Drivers' World Championship a race early. Having seen the way that the season's gone, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to have another 1-2, depending on which car is more suited to this circuit, will depend on which car goes into the last race with the lead, if you will. In fact, that's not possible. Even if Hamilton wins and Verstappen is second, even if Hamilton takes the fastest lap, they'll be on the same points, but I think on countbacks, Verstappen will still hold the lead. Holy cow! This could get super tight at the end, guys. This is exciting. But enough about the championship. Enough about the drivers running the show at the front. Let's talk about our 3rd place finisher, taking his first podium in 7 years. Mr. Fernando Alonso, take a bow. I didn't think I was an Alonso fan anymore, but you know what? It turns out that love runs deep. I was very happy to see Alonso up on that 3rd step of the podium. I think a lot of people were. It was just nice to see a very well-renowned driver in his credit, and rightfully so. He's a very good all-round driver, very quick driver, very clever driver, and that really helped him and paid off for him in this race in holding that third place finish. So a fantastic job from Alonso and a great job from Alpine, really utilising kind of Alonso's racing knowledge and their own strategy to come together and pull off a fantastic race. One of those ones that kind of comes out of the blue that you don't really expect to happen, but with both Perez and Bottas knocked down the field quite early doors, it was the time for another team, a random team, to take a random podium. So a great job to them. Very good drive, very good tyre management, very good job from Alonso. Perez was closing in at the end, chasing for that third place. And I think everyone was sitting on their sofas or the grandstand or wherever, just kind of hoping he wouldn't close in the gap and Alonso would take that podium. But a great fourth place finish. Like I said, brilliant recovery from Perez, starting from 12th, I think, in the end on the grid, to come up to 4th by the checkered flag. Again, great points for Red Bull, closing down that gap to Mercedes in the constructors fight. Apparently, the Alpines really suit the Qatar circuit because Ocon was 5th. I don't think anyone would have predicted that at the start of the race. It was a very good race for Alpine, really well put together, and clearly the strategy didn't just stand for one car, and that's always nice to see. When a team managed to really nail the strategy, it's always nice that it doesn't just happen for one car, but both. Just a great job. Good job, Alpine. A great weekend to be an Alpine fan, for sure. It was a wonderful race as well for Aston Martin's Lance Stroll, who managed to come across the line 6th, again beating out both McLarens and both Ferraris. These cars, I only say it like that because in terms of the championship standings and how you expect these cars to perform, you would expect the Ferraris and the McLarens to be outpacing the Alpines, the Aston Martins. So to see 3 of those 4 cars come across the line ahead of any of those 4 cars in the fight for 3rd place in the championship, damn, I hope that made sense because it sounded pretty good. It's always impressive to see, I don't want to call them it, but the midfield teams kind of utilising strategy, doing something a bit different, playing with the tyres a bit differently and having it pay off to have these great results. So a great drive for Lance Stroll as well, taking 6th ahead of the duo of the Ferraris, Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Leclerc's had a difficult few weekends. Sainz really seems to have a handle on this car around these last few circuits. Brazil he did well at, Qatar he's done well at, so I don't think it's a shift in like balance at Ferrari. It just may be that Sainz has got to grips with the car now, or there's still something about the car that Leclerc can't really get on board with, and that's why he's struggling a little bit with setup or balance or anything like this. It could be anything. I still wish that Ferrari would generate a great car because I think the 2 drivers in the car, Leclerc probably is world championship material, but not in the car he's currently got. He needs a car that he can fight in. So I really hope for next season Ferrari can pull something out of the bag and come up the field because, like I've said way too many times in the past, the more cars you have up the front fighting for 1st, not 3rd, the better the season is. I'd absolutely love next year to be Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, all fighting for wins, for podiums, for championships all the way through next season. That would be amazing. That would be 8 different cars fighting up the front, all with a great shot of winning. Now, unfortunately, because of the engine regs and all this good stuff, we will eventually talk about, and I've been saying I will for ages, but we will eventually talk about it. I don't see it happening. I see 2022 being very similar to 2021 in terms of order and performance. But here's hoping for a resurgence. McLaren's had been having a great resurgence this year. They've had a very tough triple header, that's for sure. But definitely a resurgence to the top for both teams would be absolutely fantastic. Rounding off the top 10 was Norris in 9th, and then Vettel coming home for that final point in 10th. Again, as I was just saying, McLaren really struggling through this triple header. Ricciardo only coming across the line 12th in the end, and he really didn't have a very good qualifying of it either. So a really tough few weeks for McLaren, but with the week rest we've just had and now going into the final couple of races of the season, hopefully they can come back and have a great fight with Ferrari. Ferrari now charging away with 3rd in the constructors with multiple double points finishes versus McLaren's 1 or 2 point finishes over the last few weekends. Ferrari really seem to have come good towards the closing points in this championship with that engine, with that package, with the aero, with everything. And like I say, Sainz seems to have a little bit more of a handle on it than Leclerc at the moment, but it's a strong third place Ferrari, which is not what you should be saying about Ferrari, but considering where they are and the fact we've only got 2 races left, let's just go with it. It's a strong third place Ferrari, and I think McLaren are going to struggle to pull that back from them unless they can really turn it around in these last 2 races. Next up is Saudi, another completely new track, which hopefully is finished in time. I think it is. I think the track and the pit lane and the garages are at least all done. It's supposed to be the fastest track. It's kind of Singapore-y in terms of narrow, not really a lot of overtaking points from what I've seen. It's got long straights, it's got not too many heavy brakes. I think it's got a couple of heavy braking points and then a few fast corner complexes, that's right. So I don't know who it's going to favour. Straight line speed alone, you'd have to put money on Mercedes for this one, but I don't know if that's enough, because I thought Mexico would be the Mercedes circuit and Brazil would be the Red Bull circuit, and that was completely flipped on its head. Red Bull dominated in Mexico and Mercedes were all about Brazil, so it's very difficult to know which circuit it's going, which car it's going to suit better. Knowing so little about the circuit, it's kind of Paul Riccardi in terms of its shape and length. Verstappen, Hamilton, Perez, Bottas for Paul Ricard, the French circuit earlier this year. So in terms of that, my gut instinct says this is probably going to be in Red Bull's favour. And then we've got Abu Dhabi, which, you know, it's got a couple of long straights. We'll see. If Mercedes have found a way to make their straight line speed phenomenal, which they seem to have done in the last couple of circuits, then Red Bull have got no chance, because they'll never catch them, especially on Saudi, because it's pretty much full of long straights. It's a bit like Canada in that way. I don't know, apparently it's like every circuit in my mind. I have no idea. So that's going to be an interesting one. Do let me know down in the coffee pot what you think the Saudi Grand Prix is going to bring us. Who do you think is going to come out on top? And do you think the 2 drivers at the top of the championship are going to come out neck and neck on points going into that final race of the season? A couple of other things to mention. Our final seat of the 2022 season has now been filled. Antonio Giovinazzi is out of Alfa Romeo and being replaced by Guan Yu Zhou. I think it's a good choice. No offense to Giovinazzi or any Giovinazzi fans out there, but I just feel like over the last few years, he's just not really done anything to prove to bigger teams he's worth taking a risk on. So I always like to see the F2 drivers come through. I think that's a really important cycle as part of Formula One. And in my opinion, there should be a new F2 driver in every year. I have a whole scheme about teams and stuff. Maybe I'll go into with you at some point. But I think it's important to keep fresh talent coming through, because otherwise you get kind of the Ilott effect, where you've got a very, very strong driver, a very, very quick driver who completely misses that. I mean, he's missed his boat. I don't think we'll see Ilott in F1, and that's a real shame, because he really proved his worth in F2. And I feel like there should be a way to at least give these guys a chance in F1 if they've shown their worth in F2. But anyway, that's a discussion for another time. Other things, very, very sad news came in today, as of the time of I'm recording, which is sadly, Sir Frank Williams has passed away. It's a devastating loss to the Formula One community, to the motorsport community, to everyone who knew him, friends, family, relatives. My thoughts and everything go out to you at this very trying time. I hope you're doing well. He was an absolute legend in the sport. He had such a special way of running his team. He was such a special member of the motorsport community and family, and will definitely be sorely, sorely missed. He was one of the ones that I would have loved to meet one day, and he was on my list of those who I would have a dinner with to talk out the good old days, if you will. A real loss, even though the Williams family is no longer directly involved with Formula One. Obviously the Williams team runs on. Frank's legacy runs on without him, and will continue to run on way into the future, hopefully. But yes, a real big loss, a very sad loss today. And as I said, for everyone, even if you didn't know him but you were a big fan, if you're feeling it today, just, it's okay to mourn, it's okay to be sad. But you know, let's celebrate the amazing man he was and what he managed to do and what he managed to come from and become and all the great things he managed to do for the sport, which made him so legendary. So rest well, Frank, and we'll very much miss you here in the motorsport community, Formula One and all the rest. So to end that on a little bit of a sad note, that is all I have to talk about today, as per usual. Please let me know all your thoughts, feelings and everything else about the Qatar Grand Prix down in the comment box below, and also let me know your predictions, thoughts and feelings ahead of the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. I will happily continue the discussion with you downstairs. As always, I love talking this out with you. I love talking about motorsport, so let's keep the conversation going down in the comment box below, and I will see you down there. But for now, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It's been an absolute blast as always. If you enjoyed this video, go shoot that like button, some Formula One love. And if you want to support the channel, go hit subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss next time I upload a video. Stay awesome, and I will see you all